Hey everyone, excited to introduce to you my meditation coach, Nicki Mehta, who's also a professor at a California university. I'm really grateful to have you on episode 107 of Davidson Hang podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so glad we crossed paths. So anyone else who's done Tony Robbins, we met through Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power from Within. And I remember like you're always so energetic and you're always like so positive. And I was like, yeah, I definitely need to get to know her.
That was so fun. That was a lot of fun. I had always dreamed about doing Tony Robbins events. Like
Yeah.
that documentary on Netflix over and over and over.
Yeah. Tony's the man. Like he's such a good storyteller. I feel like it's hard to not like listen. Like I feel like he always like pulls you, and then bam, there's
Yeah,
like always something a surprise. And you're like, whoa.
I know. And he did so well with the online thing, I think, because to make
Yeah.
that huge event to online, it's got to be a huge task.
Yeah, and honestly, I went into it thinking like I'm like, oh, it's online. Like, how great can it be? Like I kind of had low expectations, and then I was like, whoa, like this is actually a really cool experience.
Yeah, it was really fun. I love breaking the board and stuff too.
Yeah, I know. I feel like now I want to get like a harder boards and just keep trying.
I know. It was fun. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
so glad we connected too. And it seems like, we've just grown like this little community. So it's been really nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I do notice like a lot of meditation teachers that I've met along the way have had like a lot of experiences that have caused them to like want to um practice mindfulness and want to be the source for others and want to help others kind of do their healing journey.
Mhm.
If you don't mind sharing, like, were there a couple like defining moments that like really stood out to you that it's like, oh, I want to be able to like share this practice with others?
Mm. Well, I launched the business September of last year. But I like something just started clicking for me once I started teaching it to my students. So I would do, like Tony Robbins does this whole priming thing. I would do that without even knowing that I was kind of priming, but like I would go to the school beforehand and because I was really low, I had suicidal ideation and I had to take a medical leave and like, so reversing, I mean, if I back up a bit, in terms of the experience that I had, I was going through a divorce and I was really struggling and my anxiety was really high, my depression was really high. I just couldn't seem to function. And so I would do the priming exercises before going into work once I started teaching again. And then I was just like, I'm just going to weave this into the classroom and just start teaching this meditation and self-development work that I'm studying in,
Mm.
teaching it to my students. So it just started clicking for me. Like the more I do it, the more I practice and give this gift of slowing down and really paying attention to, how you're being in the world, right? And like what kinds of decisions you're making and the choice of words and all these things. And so I got a lot of really positive feedback from the students. And then I just felt like there's something here. And then last summer, a girlfriend of mine we started like meditation groups at the park and we had people on Zoom and at the park live. And this is when COVID was happening. And then of course the social unrest and racist, horrible police brutality issues that, George Floyd protests and all these things were happening all at the same time. And so I felt like I wanted to start weaving in, the social justice work that I've been doing for years as an activist. I'm an activist with my union and I've been a strong activist really since I was about 13. I started volunteering.
Wow.
It's been a long time. And I feel like once I started weaving it into what I normally do, in terms of the teaching and the activism work, it just started clicking that I need to start sharing this more frequently. So yeah, I'm just, I have a few clients under my belt and, I'm growing it and it feels really just on purpose. So I'm
Mhm.
excited for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of our past experiences, like you mentioned that you've had some negative experience in life, right? But in a way, like those were probably some of the greatest teachers, right? Like, because clearly, like if you think about the lifetime of how many lives that you're going to be impacting and that you continue to impact every day, it's like a butterfly effect, right? Like it's a
Mhm.
compound effect. So it's cool to see that, how many lives you truly will impact.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, it's such a cool feeling to know that.
Yeah, I'm humbled by it, honestly. Like I really, and I don't know everything. I mean, obviously I'm kind of exploring and learning from my students as well. I always say that even in the classroom, it's like I'm learning from you all just as much as you're learning from me. So, I definitely, I just, every time I have like any of our sessions that we've had together, it's just been like, it just becomes easier and easier
Yeah.
every time you do it. But then I hang on to this like idea that I'm still so new at it, and it's still such a
Mm.
shiny, it's like a shiny diamond that I just want to take care of.
Mm. Yeah, that's such a great mentality, right? Someone that like yourself who's been practicing for so long, but still has that mindset that there's still so much more to learn. I think that's rare. I think those are the people who are the most successful because they're open to like new learnings, right? They're not
Mhm.
oh, I know everything, right? So I think
Mhm.
that's a really cool mentality to have.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't help it. Like it's like you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like work. It's similar to
Mm,
I'm sure your business coaching work that you do. It just doesn't feel like there's effort. It's like
mm,
going out of you, and
mm.
you have the same kind of mindset too, I think, where you want to learn. So we learn a lot from each other. I like it.
I think in the beginning, like if for me at least, like it did feel like work, but then I realized like, okay, I'm not giving people enough space. I was
Mhm.
trying too hard, like I was trying too much. And then I
Mhm.
think over time I realized like, oh, okay, I actually don't have to do any work. It's like letting
Mhm.
the client have the space to grow. Right. But I
Yeah.
think in the beginning I wasn't like that. Like, especially the first year when I was training and they were
Sure.
training us, like I was like, because I was so used to doing work that I'm like, oh wait,
Mhm.
this has nothing to do about work.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And the moment you go, it's like everything just falls into place, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So, and we definitely met for a reason. Like I'm super grateful, that you reached out and that we were able to connect. So,
Yeah. It's interesting how life like works. Like
mhm.
because a lot of times I meet people that have gone through like Tony Robbins stuff and they're like, oh, I wish I did it earlier in life. They're like, you're so lucky you're doing it this early in, you know. But I'm like, yeah, I guess that's one way to put it. But I feel like if I didn't go through what I did in the past at different stages,
Exactly.
it just wouldn't work, right? Like I'm glad it went through like everything went the way it did from the parents'
Mhm.
divorce to, like me and my mom not being on good terms and, me not having like a super close relationship with my sisters. Like I'm glad that all happened because if it
Mhm.
wasn't for that, I don't think I would be into this stuff as much.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, and I'm curious about so it sounds like you love helping people, like you love being an activist. Like, do you think like that's just who you are, like even at the core, like at a young age, like were you just someone who always loved to help people and be of service?
I think so. I mean, I don't really remember it being um, like I wasn't exposed to it necessarily. I mean, I kind of was through my dad. I mean, I remember him doing things like he would volunteer for the Special Olympics. And he was an electric engineer and made good money, and still he gave back, and that kind of mindset of giving back is really a part of, I guess I learned it kind of vicariously through him, but like it wasn't
Mm,
direct, like it wasn't like you should go volunteer. It was like I
mm,
knew that, there was this, so when I was 13, I was part of this teen theater troupe about HIV and AIDS prevention. So we would go to like middle schools and high schools, and we would perform these like little skits. We were educating our peers about sex and about STDs and about HIV and all these things, because it was during the time when, HIV and AIDS was starting to really, ramp up, and I don't want to date myself. It was, there was still a lot of kind of myths out there about how to contract HIV and AIDS as well. And so we would really debunk a lot of that. And so, it was just really fun it didn't feel like I was working or, giving back anyway. It was like, I was just having fun with it, and I try to have fun with whatever I do. And I always actually, when I hang up with somebody, before I hang up, I'm like, have fun, like that's like just like keep trying to have fun no matter what, even if it feels like drudgery, like doing taxes or something, it's like trying to find something that's fun about it,
Yeah.
So that kind of playfulness and childlike, mentality is still, it's still so important to tap into. So.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think too many of us, especially I'm sure, even in California, right? There's so many of us that are like chasing the next promotion, but then at the end of the day, it's if we just have fun there in the process and everything, we're not in our heads as much, and we can just feel and just be with people, right?
Yeah, exactly. And things come, like successes still come to me. Like I'm not like, what I mean? I'm not saying don't pursue, but I don't feel like I have to take as much action. And especially with the manifestation work that I do, the visualization, the meditation. I mean, I've been doing this for so long where I don't want to like brag or anything. It's not to brag. It's just to say like, I see the manifestations and I celebrate them when they come. And I think that that's the difference. Is like people don't realize that they have this ability to manifest like, and you're into that too, right? I mean, you did that same kind of work where you're manifesting your relationship and your, new, house or what have you. And like, there's lots of different people who are doing that on a regular, but they're not connecting it to manifestation work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think like the world, like schools don't normally teach this stuff, right?
No.
But it's arguably more important than more of this tangible stuff, right? It's like you said, like when I started really like, thinking about my house and thinking about like marriage and stuff like that, and actually like visualizing it and actually like playing it out in my head, like that, it's more likely to happen, right? Whereas like maybe the first 20 years of my life, I think I was just trying to force everything. And it didn't work out because I think I was just trying too hard. And whereas like now, like there's a little bit more ease, I would say. Like I don't necessarily have to force it. Like I'm like, okay, well, if I just think about the memories, or think about the feelings I get when I'm with my friends, like it's easier for me to replicate because I'm like not motivated. I'm like, oh yeah, that was such a great feeling. Like we were so happy. And then that I feel like wants to cause me to have action rather than like the other way around, right? I think it's like people get it reversed, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what all I study, like, on a regular basis. I mean, I tell people, I don't really watch the news. I mean, I know that, people are like, well, how can you not watch the news? And I teach media literacy, which is funny because I should probably watch the news, right, more regularly. But I do it just enough to where I can, I can know current events and topics, but I don't need to consume the news to that degree, right? Just, kind of taken over my life. And so I think that, and I used to be a complete, I mean, you wouldn't have recognized me 3 or 4 years ago, even. I mean, I was waking up in the night crying. I wasn't able to pump gas. I wasn't able to go to the grocery store without having anxiety. Like I was really low. And I couldn't see. I was like, it was like walking around with blinders on, right? Where it's just like, there's no light. And I had beautiful children to celebrate. I had beautiful, things around me. And like, I just couldn't, it was all bad. I was scanning my environment. Everything was just negative, negative, negative,
Wow.
And so the studying that I've been doing, it's like the brain, if you look at the neuroscience of it, the brain actually, the old brain wants to survive, right? The whole purpose of the brain really is to keep you alive, is in the big scheme of things. And so you're scanning your environment all the time for looking for what's wrong, right? Maybe
Mm.
about this before, where we're like scanning the environment for like the bear or the saber-toothed tiger.
Mm.
Now we don't have to worry about those things as much because we're more
Mm.
domesticated, right? As a society,
Yeah.
culture. But we
Yeah.
have this ability to scan. So now
Mm.
people, I would say the saber-toothed tiger is now replaced with, for some people, it's the police,
Mm.
right? For some people, it's the mother-in-law. For some people, you know what I mean? Like for some people,
Yeah.
it's something that's going to cause them harm. That's
Mm.
give them a hard time. That could
Yeah.
life, right?
Mm.
And so when you're in this kind of survivor mode on a regular basis, it bears on you. It makes you feel like you're not in the driver's seat. You're not in control of your mind, right? And so the
Yeah.
is to come out, like the meditation work allows that space between you and your thoughts, between you and your reality that you think is reality as well.
Mm.
So it's hard because, like, I'll be honest with you, the hangups that I have with this work is like, in terms of the social justice work, it's like everyone's experience is unique, right? Everyone has like a certain timeline that they're here on this earth for, in this body, right? Like if you pull back and say, okay, everything that we've experienced happens for a reason, right? We've said that before. Like you and I meeting for a reason, all of this work
Mm.
for a reason. So like, is that true for victims of police brutality?
Mm.
Is
Mm.
that true for human trafficking events? Is that true?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, is that true
Yeah.
across the board for childhood diseases, for,
Mm.
children who, contract, deadly diseases or what have you, right? So like,
Yeah.
that's a tough one still for me.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and especially with like race conversations.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a maybe I'm just making it up and to just give me purpose, but I do think like if it wasn't for all like the bullying and like the toxic masculinity, like I wouldn't have published Redefining Masculinity, right? So I do think there's things that happen that we can't explain, and I think it's like just the way it just has to, the timing wise, like it just had to be in order for us to actually take a honest look at what's going on, right? So even with BLM, like obviously like that sucks, but like with a lot of my black friends say, it's like, well, it was always there. Like people are
Mhm.
just now that we're all at home, people are noticing it more, whereas before like people just wouldn't talk about, media outlets that are owned by rich white men. Of course they're not going to show that.
Mhm.
So it's just, yeah, I mean, obviously it sucks that it's taken this long, but at least now we're
Yeah.
finally, I'm like finally starting to see change. I'm like, wow, it's
Yeah.
finally happening. It's
They
crazy.
are. I mean, yeah, they are changing a lot. Like in Austin, I read that they changed around their budgets to where they pulled like millions of dollars out of the police budget to, and then they're starting to house people. Like
Hmm.
they are creating housing opportunities for the unhoused. And it's like,
Hmm.
that's the model, right? Like the
Yeah.
whole that they're even talking about, rearranging the priorities of budgets and things is to do
Hmm.
just that.
Yeah. And I like what you said about like we have like a really old, like a million-year-old brain, and in the modern
Mhm.
age, like yeah, because there are a lot of things that people are afraid of, right? Even like driving a car and like whatever it is, right? Like there's just so many fears that people have that but most people become paralyzed at these things that are just so rare. Like even like an airplane,
Yeah.
right? If you look at the statistics, it's super rare for us to,
Right.
but people get, but so many people have phobias, but it's by
Yeah.
now the technology is so good that it's just super rare for that to happen, right? But
Yeah.
the one time it does happen once a year, like, oh, everyone's going to be talking about it, even though
Yeah.
it was the one out of like 10 million flights that happened, you
Exactly.
know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's amazing. And, I think, I don't know. I guess what I try to do with the social justice work is look at, okay, how can we find a bridge between all of us? Like, what are our common, values and common ideals? And like, how do we, like, when I first opened up the meditation group at the park, right, the first words out of my mouth were like, look, I'm not black and I'm not white, right? I'm brown and I'm like in between, and I'm trying to create space for us to dialogue about these important topics, because if we just stay in our minds about them, or only within our own little groups, like it just keeps perpetuating this
mm,
cycle. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I think branching out and like talking to people who don't look like you about race,
Mm,
about sexism, about all these other topics, like I think that that's
mm,
when we see real change.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of these platforms, right? It's like, I mean, the beauty of technology is that we do have the reach, like we're able to, like we don't live anywhere near each other, but we're able to have these
Yeah.
dialogues. That wouldn't
Yeah.
have been possible, you know, 30 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
it's just yeah, I do think like even in the past year, like I am glad I'm taking more of an active approach to learn more, like reading Martin Luther King or Malcolm X's biographies. And
Mhm.
like I don't think like I would be as interested, right? Because of these things, I'm like, wow, like I want to take a proactive approach, so just so I can educate
Mhm.
myself, and then choose what action I want to take afterwards, right? But
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
step is just educating myself.
Yeah. And then just, asking questions and being a good listener is something that I've been trying to, I've been working on, and I think that that's the biggest thing is like, I came from a household, I mean, on my mom's side, the white side, where, the, the ego played such a strong role that they would
Mm,
say, like, basically that they had no idea about, but they wanted to say that they knew about it. You know what
mm,
I mean? Like there was just
mm,
like kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It was like, instead of saying, I don't know about that, they didn't do
mm,
it, was saying, I don't know.
mm,
And I had that kind of chip on my shoulder for a long time too, where I made assumptions,
mm,
groups of people, and I've been a perpetrator of bias statements. And
mm.
I I think that if more people admitted that they have these biases too, that's the first step. It's
Yeah.
not, I'm not a, you know, um, I'm not perfect at this. There's no perfection.
Mm,
It's ongoing,
yeah.
an ongoing journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had some instances like that too where I didn't even realize it, but I was assuming that like this is so crazy to say out loud, but I was just like, oh, like all white people are privileged, right? And
Yeah.
then and then I've through a lot of the meditation groups I was a part of, I met these beautiful white men who are just super empathetic, like great allies, like just very good listeners, like you said. And I was like, my mind was blown. I'm like, wow, here I am just assuming that like all white people are inherently bad and like just trying to take advantage of like minorities and stuff. And then
Yeah.
I enter, a world of all these great people who are like really, are doing the marches in New York, BLM and like doing all this stuff. I'm just like, wow,
Yeah.
like my mind is blown, right? But sometimes it takes that like, something drastic to happen for me to realize like, wow, I had so many assumptions about people that I barely even know anything about.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it is. And the same is true for people who support Trump, or, I mean, it's like we can't make assumptions about those people. And I think
Yeah.
also we need to have dialogues with them. Like that's an opportunity to educate them about, like, okay, when you fly your Trump flag, this is how other people respond to that. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and so I think that it's just such an important time. Like right now is such a fascinating time to be alive. And like, our kids are picking up on this. Like and I think that the next generation coming up, I mean, honestly, it's just, we become more and more open-minded. I think that as
Mm,
we age, as we progress, I think if you listen to what the news say about the world, it's like, it's constantly sky is falling kind of stuff, because that's what gets eyeballs on
mm,
their news stories.
yeah.
But I think a lot of people are doing really great, amazing work that doesn't
Mm,
get talked about. Like your podcast, like, your business coaching, like my meditation coach, like we're doing
mm,
good stuff out there,
mm,
We need to keep pushing and not pushing in a way that's going to cause us harm, but like just creating opportunities for people to really learn about what's
mm.
happening.
Yeah, this conversation reminds me of this story. One of my favorite podcasters, Rich Roll, he interviewed this guy who, this is so crazy that he did this, but his he's based in San Francisco normally, but he
Uh-huh.
did this crazy thing where he ran across the whole country. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so he ran, I think it was a total of 3,000 miles, right? And
Wow.
he said like this is some like the what like the at the end of it, they were like, hey, like what was like something that you learned like during this run, like just connecting with people, right? Because
Yeah.
he didn't have any money. That's like the crazy part. He ran
Wow.
$0 in his, and he said that actually, ironically, like all the red states were actually like the nicest people to me, because he said that they actually took the time to get to know me and my story, and they sat down with me and like, he's like a lot of the more democratic states, people were in a rush, like people, in California or
Wow.
any of these states, like they're just out and about, right? So they didn't give me the
Yeah.
time of the day to get to know who I am. And they're just kind of like, what do you like? You look like homeless. Like, what are you doing?
Oh,
And
wow.
he's like, that blew my mind, because like all the states that I didn't know, I had preconceived notions, because he was like, clearly like a Democrat. And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, all the preconceived notions I had about like these hicks or white trash or whatever, like they were actually the ones that like, gave me food and paid for my meal at the diner and bought me like a donut or gave me a beer. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
that blew my mind. I was like, whoa, like
Mm-hmm.
shocked. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, like we all think that like a lot of these Trump states are just all horrible people, right? But he's like, I took the time to get to know them and hear their story and stuff. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that's
That's good.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the goal is just not make assumptions at all about anybody, right? I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
it's like, I think that even the people that, I mean, they've done interviews with people who, are part of the KKK, and it's like, I think that kind of fear-based living is so common, because you
Yeah.
wanting to be a part of a tribe, right? Like the old brain again
Mm,
is saying like I have to survive, and a lot
mhm.
of groups, like they are similar to gangs where like that's your family, like
Mm,
that's who's really taking care of you, that's who's feeding you, that's
yeah.
making sure you're alive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense in a lot of ways why people gravitate to, to people who run those kinds of organizations.
Yeah, I was actually listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast today, and the latest
Mhm.
episode, she was like a defense attorney and stuff like that. And then she used to do like a lot of criminal work. And she said that actually like we like as normal citizens, civilians think that like, oh, going to jail would be like the worst thing ever, right? But she's
Mhm.
like, she was saying how like actually for these gang leaders, like that's where they feel comfortable. That's where they feel at home, because for them, like that's their family, and they know everyone
Mhm.
there. So they say that, and then she was just saying at the end of the day, like I meet these like gang leaders that have like, like have killed so many people. But he said
Yeah.
that, at the end of the day, like we all want to be treated with respect, right? And she said, I've put a lot of people in jail, but nothing has ever happened to me, because at the end of the day, like I still treat people with respect. And she's,
Mhm.
and the way she talked, I was like, wow, like, yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
thought of it like that.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. And then, I think to so the other part of this work is like, okay, the criminal, that kind of, that stereotype that we put out there, oh, that person's a criminal, right? Instead of saying, you could say that's a human who committed a crime, right? So then it gives, you can have the compassion for that person. Like, we don't know why they committed that crime. There could have been, we don't know why someone's driving really recklessly through traffic. There could be an emergency that they have to go to or what have you, right? There's a lot of things like that we want to know the answer to why people are doing what they're doing. Staying in our lane, in a sense. Like, I remind myself, like, I stay in my lane sometimes, I'm not here to like solve everybody else's problems. I have stuff to kind of solve, right, for myself. So it's been really helpful to just be like, okay, they're going to figure that out. Like allowing, like you were saying, allowing space. They're going to figure this out on their own, and it's going to be okay, So even with the kids, like I do that with the kids now, and it's like, I just gotta like, I can't be the helicopter. I gotta allow them to be just who they are.
It's so true, because I do think, like, my wife's parents, I would say, like, used to be pretty involved, and they want, like a lot of Asian quote tiger parents, right? But I think, like, now, like, they're seeing, like, okay, she'll be fine. Like, if I give her space, like, she'll grow, she'll kind of, figure out on her own. So now I feel like they're giving us a lot of space, which is great. And I think we have grown a lot since we moved into our new home, right? But I think sometimes it's hard to do that, right? Because, like, you want your child to be safe, and you want them to have the best, and you want everything to be okay. But I think too much of that is not good, right? If we're thinking too much about the other person, because at the end of the day, it's like almost out of our hands, in so many ways.
Yeah. The moment that they were even born, it's like they are their own, they have their own agenda, their own identity, their own entity, right? And they're going to do things that you might disagree with, and and that's okay.
I like our conversation about how doing the inner work ultimately affects, like, everyone, right? Because when we're our best selves, that's when we can show up for the world, and it starts to take care of ourselves. Which I think some people, we focus too much on others as a way of not wanting to take care of ourselves, but at the end of the day, it always comes back to ourselves, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's just so much easier because you don't want to look at your own shit. I mean, you never want to look at your own stuff. It's too, it's scary. It's like, when I look at past relationships, for example, romantic relationships and things, I'm like, okay, I'm the common denominator here. Like, what kinds of things did I do? What kinds of choices did I make? And how could I improve on that? And admitting when I'm wrong. Like, I've been getting really good at that. It's like, I'm wrong. And I'm okay with that. I can say I'm sorry and admit when I'm wrong. And I didn't used to I would be like, nope, the other person's wrong. Nope. No.
Yeah. It's so true. I feel like with my wife, she's like, babe, you gotta budget better. You gotta budget better. And she's always right. Like I'm always like, no, I don't. And at the end of the month, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. She's always right, I feel like. But like you said, it's hard for me to admit it, right? Because that must mean, like, oh, something's wrong with me if I can't, like, we always make it like mean something about us, and like permanent, like it's a statement, instead of like, oh no, I was being X, Y, and Z for just today, or just this moment. It doesn't mean forever, and in part, like, forever, but it's just like, okay, this action I did was X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And that,
like, would you say like you're exactly the same as you are when you first met your wife? Like, in terms of who you are and what you like, or who, what kinds of things you're.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, see, so like everything that we're doing, like, we evolve, right? We're constantly evolving. Like, there's constant change. And I think that especially in a romantic relationship, I know that I caught myself like, well, he used to do this, and this, that's how he is. And like, I can to that, so.
Yeah, I mean, she called me out on it even yesterday. She's like, oh, like, you're saying that's what I was when you first met me, but maybe I'm not like that anymore. I'm like, oh snap.
Mhm.
She got
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I know. I've had even my husband at the time was like, why are you so into, I think it was yoga or something. What is it about this yoga that you're so, and it's like, instead of saying, I see you pursuing growth, like you know what I mean? Like I want to celebrate the other person. I want to make sure that the other person knows that I see them investing in themselves. You know what I mean? And so that to me is what's missing, I think, and a lot of times is like, even with friendships, like, I want to celebrate you're my friend. Like I, we work together, but like, I see you as a friend, as an ally, as a community, part of my community. And like, whatever we can do to just uplift each other, I think is missing, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, I mean, it is rare for people to acknowledge each other. Like, we
Mhm.
should be doing it daily, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes people do it when it's too late. Like, at the deathbed is when people say what they really want to say. And it's like, really? You have to wait until then?
Yeah.
By then,
Yeah.
sometimes it's too late.
With my grandmother, that was the way. Yeah. I was planning on going there the day before she passed. Like she went, yeah, I was, because there were some adversarial like dynamics and we hadn't talked really, openly,
Mhm.
and then she passed. So I just did that at, as she was passing, I just released it all, and I've done some work at her grave site and things too, in terms of releasing, because it doesn't have to end once they pass, even like you can
Mhm.
continue on that healing, I think that
Yeah.
people forget, like, just because a person's not physically there anymore, that you can't talk to them or that you can't be with them, or, um, but I there was a lot. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack. That's a whole nother show. I mean, it just really is, it's powerful work to just the self-healing, the healing arts, all of it. I'm just so fascinated by. And there's, the spectrum is so vast. Like, there's lots of different ways to do this work. And so it's just about finding what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point because everyone does, and I'm sure at different stages we need different things, right? So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I,
I
I,
mean, it's, I think some people think like it's like some kind of religion, in terms of meditation, and for some it is, and if they see
Mhm.
that, then that's great. But like, I think as a coach, like, I'm not here to prescribe, right? I'm here to guide. I'm here to shine a light on resources, things that I've researched, and that help me too. And so if they help you, that's great.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're like a mirror, right? Like a reflection. So whatever we come up with during the day, you just amplify that, right? So if we're really excited about a project or something, like you'll shine a light, like a
Mhm.
lighthouse kind of type of mentality, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Because the journey's already laid out for you. Like, so your path is already, like, in my view, my path is already written. And so it's about, having the awareness to kind of observe the path. And so you can
Mhm.
choose different paths, like it might not be written to a point where you don't have free will or no choice, but it's uh it's about having mindfulness and awareness of where you're going, what kinds of decisions you're actually making, and what kind of person, who are you, is kind of a question that comes up for me all the time. It's like, who am I, and what kind of person do I want to become, to be a model for my kids, and to to show up to my students in a way that's like, this is possible, that you can do this work, that you don't have to live in status quo and just be a worker and just punch the time clock and pay the bill,
Mhm.
work, and clean the house, and like, it doesn't have to just be that kind of stuff. You can be messy and make art and make love,
Mhm.
dance and play, and be silly and playful. So I think, yeah, that's those are the things I want, for everyone to experience, just to feel happiness.
Mm. Yeah, I love what you said about like experiencing the full spectrum of life, right? It's like I feel like when we've gone through everything is that much better, right? Because we know what it's like all the way at one end, and we know what it's like on the joy side, right? So then without having experienced the bad, it's hard to really have perspective on, because if we're just used to the good, then we wouldn't really know what everything else is like, right? Or
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
beauty of life.
It's exactly it. Yeah. Because you don't know joy without pain or struggle or fear or, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know darkness without light, right? So, yeah, it's the same. Mhm.
Hmm. Well, Nikki, well, I really appreciate you and our friendship and our our relationship. You've been
I
a
too.
really fun, and this has been a thought-provoking conversation. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot out of it, and maybe we'll have you back for part two, and you can share with us the story. Sounds like that would be a good opportunity for reflection, and
Yeah.
I think people can relate to a lot of what you're saying. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here with you. And thank you for all of the work that you do. I mean, my goodness, you're doing a lot of great stuff. So kudos to you.
Thanks, Nikki.
All right. Take care.
Take care.